Thanks for joining us on Shannons Club TV, where we look back on significant cars on Australian roads and in competition. You can read the full road and race histories by Mark Oastler and me on the Shannons Club website, where you can also catch up on past episodes.
Now, still to come, we'll road test our feature car with a proud owner, and we get the latest market trends from the Shannons auctions team. Right now though, let's take a look at the small British Ford that proved a winner in the showroom and in competition, the Anglia 105e.
1959 was a most significant year for the international automotive industry. New, more efficient small cars reflected the 1955-56 Suez Crisis, with its implications for the supply and price of petrol. While Alec Isigonis's BMC Mini dominated, two other important new small British cars made their debuts at the Earls Court Motor Show in London: the Triumph Herald and the Ford Anglia 105e. The new Anglia may have been the most conservative of these three, but it represented a major step forward for Ford, being about as different from the outgoing sit-up-and-beg entry-level popular as could be imagined. Here was Ford's first truly competitive small car. Not only did its radical Detroit-inspired styling, complete with reverse rake rear window, mark it as absolutely up-to-date, so too did its over-square 1-litre engine. Mark, the Go Faster Brigade, soon discovered that the Anglia's engine could be coaxed into delivering way beyond 39 horsepower, didn't they?
They sure did. You know, this was the Kent engine, the long-awaited replacement for the ancient side valve 4. As you said, a thoroughly modern engine, overhead valve, pushrod, and an over-square bore-to-stroke ratio, so it really loved to rev. Now this engine, you know, some famous UK tuners like Cosworth, like Holbay, they had some great results with that engine in single-seaters. And also Ralph Broad of Broadspeed built a very special 105e, which I'll get to a bit later on.
Terrific. The 105e Anglia was an immediate success. It was competitive in performance, more robust than a Herald or a Mini, and its sharp styling made cars like the Fiat 1100 and Renault Dauphine look dated. Few customers seemed to miss the lack of a four-door variant, sold as the Prefect in the two previous post-war series. And GM's Vauxhall would not have a small car of its own until the Viva in 1963. Amazingly, the 105e was the first Ford in the world to be equipped with a 4-speed gearbox. Arguably, the Anglia 105e was the most successful of all small cars that incorporated Detroit styling themes. It is difficult to believe how awkward the Ford Consul Classic and first Ford Capri looked by comparison. Even the 1957 Hillman Minx's reverse rake rear window was less successfully executed. Once the Cortina made its debut 3 years later, its 1.2-litre engine with 25% more power was offered in the Anglia Super. What a cracker, with a top speed of almost 90 miles per hour. Sadly, this version was not sold here. Even so, Mark, the standard 105e seemed to be popular in both racing and rallying.
Yeah, it sure was. And that was not only in the UK, it was also in Australia. When Ford of England released the new 105e Anglia in 1959, its instant popularity with new car buyers was shared by motorsport competitors in the UK and other countries, including Australia. The 105e, with its lightweight, agile handling and new Kent 1-litre engine, was a natural competition car. Its greatest racing success was the 1966 British Saloon Car Championship, when future Bathurst 1000 winner John Fitzpatrick dominated both the under 1000cc class and the overall driver's title, with 6 class wins from 8 rounds in his Broadspeed prepared Anglia. It also proved to be a rugged and relentless competitor in major international rallies, including the car-busting East African Safari. Its most impressive result came in 1963, when Kenyan-based Peter Hughes and Will Young teamed up to win their class and finish second outright. Their Anglia had also led much of the event until getting bogged in the final stages. John, the 105e seemed to, establish a small car design blueprint, if you like, which ensured the huge success of its Escort successor.
Yes, it really was, as I say, the first truly modern Ford with a 4-speed gearbox, no synchro on first, but very few cars did in those days. But it was absolutely modern in every respect, and it paved the way for the hugely successful Cortina and the Escort. And the Escort, I think, was really its true successor.
And the fact that they even put an overhead valve engine in it, I mean, the fact that they still had side valve 4s right up to the 100e, the car before the 105, just shows how Ford was really dragging the chain coming out of the war years. And I guess it may be an indication of how difficult it was for the UK in those years before everyone got up to speed.
Indeed, post-war austerity and all that sort of thing.
Very difficult time, yeah. The 105e also wrote its own chapter in the formative years of Australia's greatest motor race, appearing in all 3 Armstrong 500s held at Phillip Island before the event was moved to its permanent new home at Bathurst in 1963. The Anglia achieved a perfect finishing record, which could not be said for many of its faster rivals, which succumbed to the island's notoriously brittle track surface. But while the Anglia's rugged durability was beyond question, it was simply outgunned by more powerful and faster rivals. However, it was those 2 factors that also made the 105e a popular choice for sports sedan competitors back in the category's formative years in the late 1960s when it was called sports racing closed. Minimum technical rules allowed fertile imaginations to run free, and the cheap and plentiful Anglia proved a popular starting point for such creativity, powered up using superchargers, twin cams, 6-cylinder and in some cases V8 engines, which guaranteed to scare drivers and thrill spectators. As a result, many Aussies retain fond memories of Ford's iconic small British car, both in the showrooms and on the racetrack. Remember to join the Shannons Club, where you can connect with other enthusiasts around the country.
My name is Richard Fenner from Bendigo, and this is my Ford Anglia 105e. This particular Ford Anglia was made in 1964, and it was in a museum for a number of years and was bought sight unseen. Overall, it's reasonably sound, and the work that I need to do to it to get it up to a roadworthy specs were the usual things: brakes, seals, brake linings, and just the usual running gear. The car is stock in every way, and I have found that getting parts for them now is a little bit difficult, especially the tyres. The Ford Anglia is powered by a 4-cylinder 1000cc engine, and it's also coupled up to a 4-speed gearbox, and it's quite manageable to drive. If you don't rush it, it's quite easy. The passion for this car for me started in 1969. I first saw these cars racing in Phillip Island, and they certainly fueled the passion to continue with the marque, and I certainly fell in love with this model. The car has also been featured in numerous films, from Russia with Love, James Bond, and the Harry Potter movies, Mr. Weasley's car. I am an avid collector of motor vehicles, cars, motorcycles and aircraft. The Jodel D9 and the Corby Starlet CJ1. Future plans are to retain it as long as I can. I would like to point out to you that we are all custodians of vehicles like this for such a short time. And I hope at one stage this to be passed on to somebody with another passion.
Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borobon is here with some market advice on the 105e Ford Anglia. Welcome, Chris.
John, how are you?
Welcome, mate. The 105e, in production for about 8 years. more than 1 million produced.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the survival rate now? That's a lot of cars to be scattered around the world, isn't it?
Yes, there was, isn't it? And I mean, funnily enough, we don't see many around today. I think, you know, they're quite popular in the club scene. We still have people coming into the showroom and talking about Ford Anglias. Yeah, you know, I think it was a very, you know, popular car in its day.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, it's embedded into a lot of people's mind.
It really is.
It's just one of those iconic cars.
It's the racing connection, isn't it? Because so many people took them club racing and stuff.
Exactly.
That was quite the car in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was,
and it was also, I think, you know, when you look back on it, you know, American styling influences were so strong around the world in the 1950s. A lot of people tried to adapt those big American looks for small cars. In a lot of cases it didn't work, but I reckon they really got it right with the 105e.
I think they did, and
It's
I
a
think
good-looking car.
that reverse rake,
Yeah, that's
Mercury
right.
style reverse rake rear window actually worked on the Anglia, but it didn't work so well on the 1956 Hillman, for one example, which was a smaller car too.
We still see a couple racing around in historic racing here in
Yeah, that's
Australia,
right.
so
Yes.
it's good to see them out there. But I think, you know, when we got the Cortinas that came out and then followed by the Escort, I think, you know, that's really sort of made the Anglia a bit redundant in racing from a
Yes.
performance perspective. So,
Sure.
There's a lot of nostalgia attached
There
to
is,
this car, though, isn't there? So it was popular, certainly in Australia. A lot of them raced, as you said. In the street scene, though, are you finding people are restoring them, or there's a lot of original ones now, or are they turning up modified because they were so heavily modified when, you know, when they were 10 or 20 years old?
Again, I think it's very rare that we do see them come through,
that
whether
right?
it's for
Yeah.
insurance or whether it's coming into the showroom. I can't tell you the last time we've had one for sale. But I think, you know, it's a tight-knit community, and I think a lot of these are changing hands amongst the enthusiasts and club members. It's, yeah.
I might be wrong, but my feeling is that with an Anglia 105e, because it was such a specialist and loved little car, that actually a tastefully improved one with more power would probably command a bigger following than a stock standard one. But
I think it was very accepted, wasn't it? I mean, very accepted that you modified the Anglia. So I think whether it's in modified form or standard form, it's acceptable. You know, people love it in that modified form because it's got a bit more go about it, and it's usable.
And what about the Anglia Super? Like, we didn't get that in Australia, but do you find with the 1.2 litre engine, higher performance obviously, do you see any of those being imported or?
No, I don't think it. You know, again, I don't think they carry a high enough value in the marketplace to, you know, to justify the importation of that car across. You know, I think that's probably what's prohibitive for a lot of people.
So any restorations have already been done probably by this stage. I imagine there's lots of parts in the UK. So
yeah, look, you know, definitely in the UK there's a very big following.
Big, yeah.
You know, anytime you watch the Goodwood Revival, you know, there are several Anglias still racing in the historic racing scene there.
I think it was more a British thing really than an Australian thing. Thanks very much for joining us today, Chris. And remember, you can get all the latest auction results on the Shannons Club website. If you'd like your own memorable image of the Ford Anglia in competition, visit the huge archive at autopics.com.au.
it's interesting when you reflect on this car how right the packaging was for the late 1950s, because some elements of that car remained in production for a long time, didn't they?
Well, the Kent engine made it into the next century in the Ford KA, which is pretty formidable.
Which
isn't it?
was, you know, what, late 90s?
But you think about almost the bravery of Ford in producing such an impressive car after those Ford Populars and Ford Prefects with 3-speed gearboxes and side valve engines and that sort of stuff to make this car and to give it the reverse rake rear window and all that sort of stuff. And you think about it, BMC lost money on every Mini they ever sold. You can bet Ford didn't lose money on the Anglia.
And, you know, to stay in production for 8 years and produce more than 1 million units, it was an incredibly successful car,
At a
wasn't it?
time when the world was changing so rapidly too. Yes.
Yeah. Amazing history.
Indeed it is. We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the hugely successful Ford Anglia 105e, and we'll catch you next time on Shannons Club TV.